Part 3, The Starlight Reckoning. Opening segment, The Dawn of the Call. The clock struck 6 a.m. on Tuesday, October 26, 2025, in Palo Alto, California, and the first rays of a crisp 55-degree dawn pierced through the sprawling 47-acre estate like shards of molten gold. The air carried a faint chill, a whisper of the autumn that clung to the edges of Silicon Valley, but inside the glass-walled study where Elon Musk stood, the atmosphere was electric, alive with a hum that wasn't just the buzz of innovation but something ancient, something unearthed. At the center of the room, on a sleek steel table worth more than most people's homes, glowed the Starlight engine core, a fist-sized orb of crystal and metal retrieved from the frozen valley of Calgary 2,000 miles north just days ago. Its surface pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light, casting shifting patterns across the walls like constellations dancing in a midnight sky. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also a siren's call, pulling them toward a destiny none of them could fully grasp. Elon's sharp gray eyes, framed by the sleepless shadows of a man who'd spent decades chasing the impossible, fixed on the core. His hands, calloused from years of tinkering with rockets and circuits, hovered over it, not touching, not yet, as if he feared it might burn him with the weight of its secrets. Around him stood the unlikely crew that had become as tethered to this unraveling legacy: Jolie, May, and Clara. Each carried their own scars, their own stakes, their own reasons to be here at this ungodly hour when the world outside still slept. Jolie, 85 years old and bent like a willow under the weight of time, leaned heavily on a cane that had once been a broomstick she'd repurposed from her days scrubbing cafe floors for $8 an hour. Her arthritic fingers, gnarled as old roots, clutched a faded photograph of Joshua Haldeman, her charge's father, a man whose dreams had shaped the boy who'd become the titan before her. Her breath came in shallow rasps, but her dark eyes, framed by silver curls, burned with a quiet fire. She'd spent a lifetime in the shadows of others' greatness, wiping tables, bandaging scraped knees, whispering Spanish folktales to a 6-year-old Elon under a Pretoria moon. Now, here she was, at the heart of something that could rewrite the stars themselves. She didn't feel worthy, not yet, but the core's glow seemed to say otherwise. May Musk, Elon's mother, stood beside her, her elegant frame wrapped in a cream coat that couldn't hide the tremble in her shoulders. At 77, she was a portrait of resilience, her blonde hair streaked with gray like the contrails of the planes she'd once piloted. Her green eyes, so like her son's, glistened with unshed tears as she stared at the core, a piece of her late husband Joshua, a man she'd mourned for 54 years, believing he'd abandoned her in that fiery 1971 crash. The revelations from Calgary had shattered that lie. He'd died to protect her, to protect the unborn Elon, to shield this very dream now pulsing in their hands. The truth had mended one wound and opened another, and she couldn't shake the ache of what might have been. Clara, the youngest at 23, hovered near the edge of the group, her auburn hair tangled from restless sleep on the jet back from Canada. Her arm was still bandaged from Victor Grayson's ambush in the valley, a reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. She was Jolie's grandniece, a SpaceX intern with a sharp mind and a sharper tongue, but right now she looked small, fragile, her freckled face pale against the weight of what they'd uncovered. She'd been the one to spot the signal in Calgary, the one to insist they listen when the core crackled to life. Now, her hazel eyes darted between the orb and the window, as if she expected the coalition to burst through the glass at any moment. The silence stretched taut, a wire ready to snap, until the core did it for them. A low hum rose from its depths, vibrating the table, the floor, their bones. Then came the static, a hiss like wind through a frozen forest, and a voice, faint but unmistakable, cut through the noise. "Joshua, I kept it, Evelyn." The words hung in the air, fragile as frost, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Evelyn Carter. Joshua's partner. The scientist who'd vanished after the crash, the one who held the other half of the Starlight, according to his second journal. Alive. In Alaska. 1,500 miles north. The coordinates flashed on a nearby screen: 66.5 degrees north, 149.8 degrees west, a pinpoint in the wilderness, a beacon in the dark. Elon's jaw tightened, his mind already racing through logistics, probabilities, risks. "She's alive," he said, his voice low, clipped, the way it got when he was solving a problem bigger than himself. "After 54 years, she's alive, and she's got the engine." He turned to the group, his gaze sweeping over them like a general rallying troops. "We're going. Now." May's hand flew to her chest, her breath catching. "Evelyn. I thought she was gone." All this time, her voice broke, and she looked to Jolie, as if the older woman could anchor her through the storm. Jolie nodded, slow and steady, her cane tapping the floor like a metronome of resolve. "She kept it," Jolie murmured, echoing the voice from the core. "For him. For you. For all of us." Clara stepped forward, wincing as she adjusted her sling. "The signal's weak, but it's steady. If we don't move fast, someone else might pick it up. Victor's out there, probably licking his wounds, but he won't stay down long." Her words were a spark, igniting the urgency that had been simmering beneath their shock. Elon was already moving, pulling a tablet from the table and barking orders into it. "Lucia, get the G650 fueled and ready. Wheels up in 30. Alaska, coordinates locked. Full crew standby." The Gulfstream G650, a $70 million jet that could outrun anything short of a fighter plane, was their lifeline now, a bullet aimed at the heart of this mystery. He paused, glancing at the core, then at his mother. "May, you're sure about this?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, but her nod was firm. "I lost him once. I won't lose what he left behind." The steel in her voice was a mirror of her son's, a reminder that the Musk blood ran deep with defiance. Jolie shuffled forward, her cane clicking against the polished floor. "And me, Nino?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with something unyielding. "You dragging an old woman into the snow?" There was a flicker of humor in her eyes, a challenge, and Elon's mouth twitched into the ghost of a smile. "You're the keeper of the stories, Jolie," he said. "If Evelyn's half is anything like Joshua's, we'll need you to make sense of it." It wasn't flattery, it was truth. Her folktales, her lullabies, her quiet wisdom had unlocked the journal in Calgary. She was their compass, whether she believed it or not. The moment of levity shattered as a sharp beep cut through the room. Clara lunged for the console, her good hand flying over the controls. "Encrypted channel, SpaceX secure line," she said, her voice rising. She tapped the screen, and a distorted voice crackled through, cold and precise. "Bring the core, or the coalition takes it, Alaska, midnight." The line went dead, leaving a silence heavier than the one before. 12 hours, Elon muttered, checking his watch. 6:05 a.m. now. Midnight in Alaska was a hard deadline, and the coalition wasn't known for bluffing. Victor Grayson, grandson of Joshua's old mechanic Pete, had already proven that in Calgary, storming the hangar with his Starlight Coalition goons, kidnapping Clara, leaving them scrambling in the frozen dark. He'd retreated with a warning, but this was a promise. May's face paled, her hand gripping Jolie's arm. "They're watching us." "How do they know?" Her voice trembled, but there was anger there too, a mother's fury waking from decades of slumber. "They've been watching since Calgary," Clara said, her tone grim. "That signal from the core, it's not just a beacon for us. It's a flare for anyone with the tech to hear it." She glanced at Elon, her eyes wide. "Victor's not working alone. That master of the Starlight he mentioned, they're pulling the strings." Elon's fist clenched, the knuckles whitening. "Then we don't give them time to tighten the noose. We get to Evelyn first." He grabbed the core, its glow flaring briefly in his grip, and strode toward the door. "Gear up. We're not just chasing a machine, we're chasing Joshua's ghost." The next 25 minutes were a blur of motion. The estate buzzed as staff scrambled to load the jet, thermal gear, medical supplies, satellite comms, everything they'd need for Alaska's unforgiving wilds. Jolie bundled into a heavy coat, her frail frame disappearing beneath layers of wool and down, the photograph of Joshua tucked into her pocket like a talisman. May packed a satchel with Joshua's journals, her fingers lingering on the worn leather as if she could feel him through the pages. Clara, despite her injury, insisted on carrying the core's case, her jaw set with a stubbornness that mirrored Elon's. At 6:30 a.m., the Gulfstream's engines roared to life on the private airstrip, a sleek silver beast cutting through the dawn fog. The core sat secured in a padded cradle between them, its hum a constant reminder of what was at stake. As the jet climbed to 40,000 feet, the temperature outside plummeted to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, the world below shrinking into a patchwork of lights and shadows. Inside, the cabin was warm, but the air crackled with tension. Jolie gazed out the window, her breath fogging the glass. "Alaska," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the engines. "Never thought I'd see it. Never thought I'd be chasing stars at my age." Her hand tightened on the cane, and for a moment, she was back in Pretoria, telling a wide-eyed Elon about a star that fell to Earth, a tale she'd half forgotten until now. Was it coincidence, or had Joshua planted that story in her long ago, knowing she'd carry it to this moment? May reached over, squeezing her hand. "You're not alone in this, Jolie. None of us are." Her eyes met Elon's across the cabin, a silent pact forged in the blood they shared. Clara, cradling the core's case, broke the quiet. 12 hours to midnight. 1,500 miles. "We'll make it, but what happens when we get there? Evelyn's alive, sure, but the coalition's got a head start." In that voice, she shivered, and it wasn't from the cold. Elon leaned back, his mind already mapping the battlefield ahead. "We find her. We secure the engine. And we end this, whatever this is." His voice was steel, but beneath it, a tremor of something human, fear, maybe, or hope, betrayed the man behind the myth. The jet streaked north, a silver arrow piercing the sky, carrying them toward Alaska, toward Evelyn, toward a reckoning 54 years in the making. The core's glow pulsed brighter, as if it knew what awaited them in the frozen expanse below, a vault of secrets, a battle for the stars, and a truth that could either save them or break them apart forever. Part 3, The Starlight Reckoning. Segment 2, The Weight of the Stars. The Gulfstream G650 sliced through the sky at 40,000 feet, its engines a steady roar against the 20-degree Fahrenheit void outside. The cabin, bathed in the soft amber glow of recessed lights, felt like a fragile bubble of warmth hurtling toward an icy unknown 1,500 miles north. The Starlight engine core sat cradled in its padded case between the seats, its faint hum a heartbeat that synced with the pulse of the four souls aboard: Elon Musk, May Musk, Clara, and Jolie. They were 30 minutes into the flight from Palo Alto, the clock ticking past 7 a.m. on Tuesday, October 26, 2025. With less than 11 hours until the coalition's midnight deadline in Alaska loomed. The encrypted warning, "Bring the core, or the coalition takes it, Alaska, midnight," still echoed in their ears, a noose tightening with every mile. Jolie sat by the window, her 85-year-old frame swallowed by a heavy wool coat that smelled faintly of mothballs and cafe grease, a relic from her decades of scraping by. Her arthritic hands, trembling like leaves in a storm, clutched a $5 photograph of Joshua Haldeman, its edges worn soft from years of quiet reverence. The black and white image showed a young Joshua, all sharp jaw and dreamer's eyes, standing beside a half-built plane in 1971, the year he'd crashed and burned to protect this very legacy now glowing in their midst. She traced his face with a crooked finger, her breath fogging the glass as the jet's altitude painted the world below in shades of frost and shadow. She felt small, smaller than she ever had in her $25,000 life of wiping tables and soothing scraped knees. How could she, a woman who'd once counted pennies to buy bread, stand at the edge of a $200 billion stakes game? The core's hum shifted, a low vibration that rattled the case and drew her gaze. Its light pulsed brighter, casting flecks of starlit blue across her wrinkled skin, and for a moment, she swore she saw Joshua in its glow, not the man in the photo, but the boy she'd known, the father of the child she'd raised. She'd been 31 when she'd taken the nanny job in Pretoria, a refugee from a hardscrabble life, hired to care for Elon while Joshua and May chased their dreams. She'd bandaged his cuts, fed him stories of fallen stars, tucked him in when the nights grew cold. Now, 54 years later, here she was, chasing those same stars across a frozen sky. The weight of it pressed on her chest, heavier than the cane resting against her knee. Across the aisle, Elon hunched over a tablet, his fingers dancing across schematics of the course signal, coordinates 66.5 degrees north, 149.8 degrees west, a speck in Alaska's wilderness where Evelyn Carter waited with the full Starlight engine. His brow furrowed, the lines of a man who'd built empires etched deeper by this personal quest. The signal's holding, he muttered, more to himself than the others. Weak, but steady. If Evelyn's alive, she's got power, something keeping that thing online after all these years. His voice was clipped, analytical, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of awe. This wasn't just tech, this was his father's soul, distilled into crystal and steel. May, seated beside him, clutched Joshua's second journal, its leather cover cracked like her resolve. Her green eyes, red-rimmed from sleepless nights, scanned the pages she'd read 100 times since Calgary, words of sacrifice, of love, of a partner named Evelyn who'd vanished with the other half of the Starlight. She kept it, May whispered, echoing Jolie's earlier words. All this time, she kept it for him. Her voice trembled, a mother's grief warring with a widow's hope. She glanced at Elon, then at Jolie, seeking something, permission, maybe, to believe they could reclaim what Joshua had died for. Clara, her arm still in a sling from Victor Grayson's ambush, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The course case rested on her lap, a burden she refused to relinquish despite the pain. 11 hours, she said, her voice tight. We're cutting it close. If the coalition's already there, she didn't finish, but the unspoken hung heavy. Victor and his shadowy master of the Starlight wouldn't hesitate to kill for what they carried. Her hazel eyes darted to Jolie, softening. You okay, Tia? You're quiet. Jolie managed a faint smile, the kind she'd used to comfort Clara as a child. Just old bones rattling, Mija, she said, her Spanish accent curling around the words like a warm shawl. But it was a lie, and they all knew it. She wasn't just tired, she was terrified. Not of the cold or the coalition, but of herself. What if she failed them? What if her stories, her memories, weren't enough to unlock whatever waited in Alaska? She'd spent a lifetime being invisible, $8 an hour, 2 jobs, a rented room with a leaky roof. Now, they looked to her like she was some sage, some key, and the pressure gnawed at her like a winter wind. The jet jolted, a sudden lurch as turbulence gripped it at 40,000 feet. The cabin lights flickered, and Clara gasped, her good hand clutching the course case as it slid toward the edge of her lap. May's journal hit the floor, pages splaying open, and Elon's tablet clattered against the armrest. Outside, the sky churned, a gray maelstrom of clouds swirling in a 20-degree Fahrenheit abyss. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, rough patch ahead, buckle up, folks. But it wasn't the weather that froze their blood, it was the core. Its hum spiked, a shrill whine that pierced the cabin like a scream. The light flared, blinding, bathing them in a cascade of blue and white that danced across their faces. Clara cried out, shielding her eyes, while May pressed herself against the seat, her breath hitching. Elon lunged for the case, steadying it, but Jolie, she froze, her hands trembling around Joshua's photo as the glow seemed to reach for her, wrapping her in its embrace. And then, through the static, that voice again, Joshua, I kept it, Evelyn. Fainter now, but insistent, a thread pulling them north. The turbulence steadied, the lights stabilized, but the core's hum lingered, softer yet somehow more alive. Clara's chest heaved, her voice shaking as she lowered her arm. What the hell was that? It's never done that before. Her eyes were wide, panicked, a child's fear breaking through her usual bravado. Elon's jaw clenched, his mind already dissecting the anomaly. It's reacting, to us, to something. Maybe proximity to Alaska, maybe Evelyn's signal syncing up. He glanced at Jolie, his gaze piercing. Or maybe you. Me? Jolie's voice cracked, a dry whisper lost in the hum. She shook her head, the photo slipping to her lap. I'm nobody, Nino. Just an old woman with old stories. No, May said sharply, leaning forward. Her hand shot out, grabbing Jolie's wrist with a strength that belied her years. You're not nobody. You never were. You raised him, she nodded at Elon, when I couldn't. You kept Joshua's spirit alive in those stories. And in Calgary, you cracked that code when none of us could. Don't you dare shrink now. Jolie's eyes welled up, the tears hot against her cold skin. She wanted to argue, to retreat into the safety of her smallness, but May's grip held her fast, and the coarse glow seemed to pulse in time with her racing heart. She thought of Pretoria, 1985, the night Elon Musk had fired her, expelled her from their home with a curt, "We don't need you anymore," his voice like a slamming door. She'd walked away with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart, leaving 6-year-old Elon crying at the window. She'd spent decades burying that shame, convincing herself she was disposable. But here, now, with the stars themselves calling her name, she couldn't hide anymore. Clara, still shaken, reached across the aisle, her good hand resting on Jolie's knee. Tia, I'm scared too. But when Victor had me in that valley, when I thought I'd die, it was your voice I heard. That lullaby you sang when I was little, La Estrella que Cayó. It kept me going. Her voice broke, and she swallowed hard. We need you. I need you. The words hit Jolie like a wave, crashing through the walls she'd built around her worth. She looked at Clara, then May, then Elon, 3 generations bound by a man she'd loved like her own, a man whose dream now rested in their hands. The coarse light softened, as if sensing her shift, and a memory stirred, a story she'd told Elon at 6, under a Pretoria sky thick with stars. La Estrella que Cayó a la Tierra, she'd whispered, her voice weaving a tale of a star that felt to guide lost souls home. She thought it was just a fable, a comfort for a restless boy. But what if it wasn't? What if Joshua had heard it too, whispering it to Evelyn, embedding it in this machine that could harness the heavens? She took a shaky breath, her trembling hands steadying as she picked up Joshua's photo. The star that fell to earth, she said aloud, her voice stronger now, threading through the cabin like a lifeline. That's what he called it, didn't he? The engine. The starlight. Her eyes met Elon's, and for the first time, she didn't look away. It's in the stories. The code, it's always been there. Elon's head tilted, a spark igniting behind his eyes. The journal in Calgary, your folktale unlocked it. If Evelyn's got the other half, and it's tied to the same pattern, he trailed off, already reaching for May's journal on the floor, flipping to the encrypted pages. May nodded, her grip on Jolie loosening but her resolve firm. You're the keeper, Jolie. Joshua knew it. We know it. The jet steadied, the turbulence fading into a distant rumble, but the storm inside Jolie raged on, fear warring with a budding courage she hadn't known she possessed. She wasn't just a nanny, not just a shadow. She was the thread that tied this family to its past, its future, its stars. The core hummed approval, its light bathing her in a quiet strength she could finally feel. Clara smiled, faint but real, and squeezed her knee. See? Told you we need you. Jolie exhaled, a tear slipping down her cheek as she clutched the photo tighter. Then I'll try, Mija. For Joshua. For all of you. Her voice was a promise, fragile but fierce, a reluctant hero rising from the ashes of her doubt. The jet streaked on, 1,400 miles to go, the clock ticking toward midnight. Outside, the sky darkened, stars peeking through the clouds like eyes watching their ascent. Inside, Jolie sat taller, her cane a scepter, her stories a shield. Alaska waited, Evelyn, the engine, the coalition, and for the first time, she believed she could face it. The stars had called her name, and she would answer,